Hey, what's up y'all? It's Dr. Paul with another mail call, A Wash in Comic Books. I have over 40 years experience collecting comics, and the channel is where I share my experience and my passion for comic book collecting, investing, and conservation with you. Today, I'm opening not one but two boxes containing a modern key, some would call a grail, that I've never owned before. I'm super excited about this. This book is one that I think should be in everyone's collection, and as often happens, I was searching for years and years, and one copy came up, and then within days later another copy came up that met my buy criteria. So I'm going to be opening both of them today. These are newsstand copies. This particular book is a book that came out during the period when newsstand were dwindling. And I was looking very specifically for newsstand copies in high grade, not 9/8, but somewhere between an 8 and a 9/4 that had opportunities for me to maybe upgrade to higher grade to improve the book and improve the fair market value. So we're going to talk about that a bit today. Plus, we have antics with boxes, and this particular one got in a fight with a USPS postal carrier, and we're gonna find out who won. So while I fumble with two unboxings, sit back and hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, stay tuned, it's gonna be fun. All right, let's get started. As I mentioned today, we have two boxes to open, doing an unusual double unboxing. This is the box that came from the seller that I found on Instagram, and he's reused a box from Rockwell Medical, which I love to see, right? Reduce, reuse. And whenever I open something from Rockwell, I always feel like somebody's watching me. My YouTube demographics tells me most of you will get that reference. We'll see. Most of the folks watching are about my age, it turns out. But we have some viewers a bit younger and some a bit older. Okay, so this is a Gemini inside the Rockwell box. Wow, look at that. All right, I approve of this packaging. Got a piece of tape right here. This is a nice looking book. Thanks again for joining me today. I'm really glad to have you along on this journey. Let's see, we'll open this one up, and then we'll open the other. Wow. That's a nice book, huh? Sharp corners. Looks like a defect right here that probably was pressable. Maybe it was pressed and then there was some reversion. It does look like maybe there's just one or two spine ticks right here that break color that would keep this probably from being a 9/8. But I agree with the seller's assessment. This could be improved. There's also a pressable defect right here that, again, he probably pressed and maybe had some reversion. But that's a beautiful book. All right, let's set that aside for a moment. And let's see about this raw book. I mentioned this one here. This one came from Lone Star Comics. And, you know, this maybe just is like an ornery box. Got in a fight with a U.S. postal carrier. And we're going to find out who won here in a moment. But Lone Star they've been in the business a long time. They don't want to have a lot of losses due to damage and shipping. So they know what they're doing. They're very sophisticated. See this? This is their normal MO, a box within a box. Both of the boxes being very secure. So I'm sure this comic book won the interaction there. We didn't need to worry about it at all. Wow. This is how it goes sometimes. You know, I mentioned in my video intro that, well, I'm not sure how this works. Seems like it just should open. There we go. I mentioned in my intro, sometimes you look for a book for years and years, and you have trouble finding a nice copy, and then 2 copies will come to you in a matter of days. That's just how it works sometimes. This is the copy that was advertised as a VF. And we know that Lone Star grades very conservatively. So we were comfortable buying this as an advertised VF. And this has I'm gonna just get a Swiffer just to remove a little bit of dust from these books so we can really show them both off. And I'm gonna look at the condition a little bit more before we talk about why we even care about this book. But so it looks like a bit of a stacking crease here. I don't know if you can see that. I'm gonna try to show you these defects without giving you too much glare. This is double bagged, so it's difficult to see any defects in there. And I don't necessarily want to do that on camera, but this book looks like it has a lot of potential. I do not see any defects here, at least on the front cover, that make me believe this is going to be anything less than at least like a 9.4. Tiny bit of scuffing and softness here, but no bad spine ticks. 2 mini ticks here, neither of which appears to break color. Sharp corner there, sharp corner there. Like I said, just really a bit of a stacking crease here that's very easy to remove, frankly. And a couple of other little pressable defects. Again, we don't see the back, we don't know anything about the interior, but I'm very encouraged by that. All right, let's talk about this book and why I sought 2 copies out and why I'm frankly so thrilled to see these right now. What a beautiful cover too. You could see why this has been homaged so many times. It really is a great cover. Babs there. So what is it and why do we care? Batman Adventures number 12 from September of 1993. This is written by Kelly Puckett with art by Mike Parobeck and Rick Burchett. It's obviously the first appearance of Harley Quinn in DC Comics. This copy is a CGC 9.4 newsstand with white pages. And this obviously is a raw copy, also a newsstand, estimated by Lone Star at an 8.0. We know they grade fairly conservatively, so I was comfortable buying this as a press candidate, and I'm really thrilled with it. This, I think, again, I haven't seen the back, haven't seen the interior, but just based on the cover, I think this has potential to grade even higher than this. I think this has 9.6 potential, and really even, I've seen worse 9.8s. The two defects we can see are easily pressed. So I think both of these are right exactly what I was looking for. Obviously, Harley Quinn is one of the most popular DC characters in comics and on both the small and big screens. And although I've never owned this book before, I've been a big fan. I was a huge fan of Batman the Animated Series where she debuted, and I did purchase her first ongoing series when it was new off the racks, and I've been a fan of the character ever since then. So it was only a matter of time before I put a copy of her first appearance into my personal collection. And what a great first appearance it is. She's featured very prominently with Batgirl and Poison Ivy on this really beautifully rendered and composed cover that, again, has rightfully been homaged so many times. A little Harley backstory is perhaps in order. She was created by Paul Dini and Bruce Timm as a henchwoman for Joker in the first season of Batman the Animated Series. She debuted in episode 22 in September of 1992. Less than a year later, she appeared here in this companion comic book series, which was intended for children and is considered outside of normal DC continuity. She didn't make her official first appearance in DC Comics canonical continuity until Batman Harley Quinn 7 years later in October of 1999, and got her first self-titled comic in December of 2000. There was also a children's book that was published between her appearance on the TV show and this comic book, but it's a children's book, it's not a comic, and Batman Adventures 12 is the comic most collectors gravitate toward, and therefore it has the highest market value of her early collectibles. Although it was considered outside DC continuity, honestly, DC has rewritten their continuity so many times since Crisis on Infinite Earths that I think most collectors just don't even care what is considered canonical today, what isn't, because DC will certainly change it before too long when they have new editorial direction, owners, or just need to juice sales a bit. I'm sorry to be cynical, but I really dislike new creative teams rewriting all of comic book history every few years. It's one of the reasons I don't read very many new comic books anymore. If you can't write good stories with the existing characters because you feel all the good stories have already been told, then just start over, like Julius Schwartz or Stan Lee did. There's no need to destroy everything that came before you just to tell fresh stories. Okay, that felt good, but let's end rant. All right, let's talk about how I acquired these books. So for the CGC book, the seller of this book had it listed on eBay for $1,275. I did what I often do, and I did some searching around for this seller and this book elsewhere, and I was able to find the same seller on Instagram. And he was offering this same book for $1,000, including shipping. I messaged him there inquiring about the book, and he indicated that he was a presser himself and that he had pressed it before submitting it. He thought it was capable of a 9.6 on a resubmit, but he was honest and said, I don't think it's quite a 9.8. And I would agree with him. It might get a 9.8, but I wouldn't advertise it as 9.8 to somebody or capable of one. After a bit of discussion with him, I offered him $900 plus shipping for the book, which he accepted. Had I purchased the book through eBay where I originally found it, I would have paid an additional 8.25% taxes, that's what we pay here in Texas, which would have put me all in on this book at $1,380. By seeking the seller out and making him an offer, I made a new friend, and I got a 33% discount from the original asking price, and at $926, I'm buying in at what is the current bottom of this bear market pricing. Of course, it could go lower, but I'm very happy with the purchase here, and the seller was also very happy. He had purchased the book and cleaned and pressed it himself, and he subbed it to CGC himself. So he avoided the fees of eBay by me communicating with him through Instagram, and I'm sure he still did very well, making this a win-win transaction, and again, one in which, I made a new friend in the comic book community. Just a few days later, my eBay search for Batman Adventures number 12 turned up a raw copy listed as VF by Lone Star Comics for $600. As I've mentioned to you before, any comic they list on eBay is also on their website, mycomicshop.com, at approximately a 10% discount. So I went there and I saw the same comic listed for $5.50. It was a consignment item, which means that there's still taxes plus an additional 3% consignment premium that put me all in on this book at $6.23. But it was still considerable savings off of eBay. Looking at the high-grade scans, I thought this book had very high potential with a cleaning press, so I was comfortable paying this for a high-grade raw newsstand copy of this book. And just like that, in the span of 1 week, I went from having 0 copies of this beautiful book to owning 2. Although this book was published for children, in the mid-1990s, comic books were printed in very high numbers, so this is not a rare book. There are 8,075 universal copies of Batman Adventures number 12 in the CGC Census, with a median grade of 9.4. But in 1993, there are far fewer newsstand copies than direct edition. The newsstand was considered about 10% of the total print run in 1993, but in high grade, far fewer than that exist today, as this great graph from J. Monty Comics illustrates. In 9.4, there are probably at least 20 direct edition copies to every 1 newsstand copy. Direct editions were just sold into a different marketplace and had a different consumer, a consumer that generally wasn't saving the copies, was consuming them, basically. And there are very few, even fewer than would be indicated by the print runs today of the newsstand editions. With the announcement from CGC in September of 2022 that they were finally going to start differentiating newsstand from direct edition variants, we have an opportunity to get these relative rarities while the rest of the market is still very volatile on the pricing. I checked, and as of this recording, there are 0 Batman Adventures number 12 newsstand in the CGC Census. This copy that I purchased from Lone Star Comics could be, if I submitted it, the first copy designated newsstand in the CGC Census. Although we don't yet have a separate census, Go Collect makes a distinction in their fair market value calculation for newsstand editions because sometimes it matters in the marketplace, especially for key issues like this. They calculate the fair market value of a 9.4 newsstand today is $925, with an all-time high of $1,300. My purchase was almost exactly their fair market value, down about 30% from the peak. In this bear market, I'm mostly seeking books at a larger discount to that. But in this case, I think we have an underpriced asset in newsstand copies of this book. So I expect outpaced gains over time as the CGC Census on newsstand editions gets filled in and collectors start to hunt them specifically. I expect this to be a long-term trend that we really have just begun, or what stock investors call a secular trend. So I'm happy getting this book at a 30% discount to all-time high, which in the current market doesn't sound like necessarily a big discount. But when you're early in what you believe to be a long-term secular trend, it's actually a great entry point. Well, I hope you enjoyed this unboxing and market report video on Batman Adventures number 12 and the story of my acquiring not 1 but 2 newsstand copies of the first appearance of Harley Quinn. I want to thank slkphotos.us on Instagram for a fun and smooth transaction. Please check him out. He's a fellow comic book cleaner and presser, and I'll put his info in the description. Any other fans of Harley Quinn out there chasing this book? What do you all think about my theory of the secular trend toward outside appreciation of the newsstand editions relative to the direct edition copies? Let me know about it in the comments below. And remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Until next time, happy hunting and take care of one another.